Good morning. Thanks for having me.
Well, we know that you are an advocate for Vice President Harris. And as a Democrat who runs a red state, how would you advise Democrats to stop losing support in rural areas?
Well, I'd advise them to first of all focus on those things that matter most to people when they wake up in the morning. When people wake up in the morning, they're not thinking about this presidential election. They're thinking about their job and whether they make enough to support their family. They're thinking about their next doctor's appointment for themselves, their kids. They're thinking about the roads and bridges that they drive. They're thinking about the school they drop their kids off at, and they're thinking about the public safety in their community. That's why I'm so excited about the Vice President's new economic plan. I think it goes right to the heart of how you support your family with two tax credit extensions or expansions that will help the middle class. It goes to affording health care and capping overall pharmaceutical costs. The bipartisan infrastructure law further helps us on the roads and bridges we travel. So very excited to support the Harris-Walz team. They're going to have a big victory.
Well, to get many of those things done, the vice president would need Congress to work with her. So those aren't quick fixes necessarily. But on the Harris economic plan that you mentioned, there was also this federal ban on price gouging on food and penalties for companies that exploit crises. President Obama's top economist, Jason Furman, was critical, saying the good case scenario is price gouging is a message, not a reality. And the bad case scenario is that this is a real proposal. You'll end up with bigger shortages, less supply, ultimately risk higher prices and worse outcomes for consumers. Do you know how this would work?
I do, because I've been an attorney general just like the vice president. I pursued price gouging statutes and their violations when it comes to the price of gas in Kentucky, and we won and ultimately returned millions of dollars to our people. This isn't about trying to price fix. It's just making sure that the economy is operating the way it should, that this is really supply and demand, which we all respect. It's no different than what Teddy Roosevelt did in breaking up monopolies. It's just making sure we have the right regulations and tools in place to make sure everybody is playing the game fairly and by the rules.
So it sounds like you're just talking about antitrust policy, which is something J.D. Vance actually supports. But Republicans, as you know, are accusing Harris of advocating for price controls, like in communist countries where the government sets a price rather than the marketplace. You just said it's not price controls, but can you explain then how you define what an excessive price is if you don't have a benchmark?
Well, first, these are types of statutes that exist in state law. The Texas Attorney General has prosecuted price gouging violations, and I don't think anyone is going to claim that he is into price fixing, and neither is the vice president. This has to be evidence-based. Ultimately, you bring an action and you have to prove it in court. So you have to have the evidence that this is beyond supply and demand, that this is people taking advantage of us. Certainly, we've seen it after natural disasters in red states and blue states. It's just making sure that coming out of the pandemic or in difficult times that people aren't increasing the price of food just to make a bigger profit. All it is making sure that capitalism stays within the guardrails, and it's not new. We've been doing this in the states for a long time.
So you also mentioned there some of the federal support for efforts already underway, including, by the way, electric vehicles, which I know Kentucky, you talked quite a lot about attracting some of these plants there, $11 billion invested in EV facilities. You've got at least 3 expected to open in 2025. What's the breakdown there of union versus non-union jobs?
Well, all of the facilities are being built with union labor, thousands upon thousands of jobs over the course of that construction, which has taken years. Now, when the Ford SK plants open, that won't be union labor because of an agreement reached between Ford and the UAW, between CEO Farley and Shawn Fain, and we respect those agreements and their negotiations. Now, what it did mean is that 10,000 plus UAW workers in Ford's 2 other facilities in Kentucky got better wages, better benefits, a better life for their families. So we're excited excited about how the union and the company were able to come together to reach an agreement that works for everybody, and that's what we want to see, right? We want to see companies continue to invest because we need them, but we want them to be good jobs that support our families, and I think that's the outcome we got here.
We've seen this interesting